This is why I love cold therapy. It saved my life. Everything changes when we step into the cold. Monty, welcome to the podcast series, Stepping into the Cold. Please tell us about yourself and what you do and what got you into cold therapy.
Okay, let's try and summarise. So for 14-ish years, I've been a professional entertainer.
Nice.
So performed all over the UK and various other places, predominantly as a jester, which is where the name Monty comes from, because my character name was the Fool Monty, which was a bit of a play on the film.
Okay.
Mostly I've done all the things people would expect jesters to do, but a big part of that in terms of magic, escapology, breathing fire, all the nonsense. I also taught circus skills. So taught something like 85,000 people to juggle in that time, as well as unicycling, tightrope walking, all sorts. That's now in my past, pretty much, because during COVID, I kind of had a big reassess of what I wanted to do, and the cold therapy will come into this as well later. But I now do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, which is I run a consultancy called Think Neurodiversity, and I advise and educate businesses about neurodivergent conditions. So things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, etc. And that's all because coming up for, 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I received an adult diagnosis of ADHD. And then last year, a non-clinical diagnosis of autism as well. None of which is a surprise. I have 2 children with autism and ADHD, so it was always in there somewhere, but it was just formalized for me.
Yeah.
So the career has sort of changed. However, one of the things that came about as an entertainer that I still am very much involved with was I got a chance to appear on Ninja Warrior UK, which was a show I'd been desperate to get a crack at, which I haven't got the course, if I'm honest, since I saw the Japanese version. And that has since led to staying involved with the show, being part of a team of athletes who open up what they call their Ninja Warrior Adventure Centres, and also being part of a group called Ninja Sport UK. And we are the UK governing body, ultimately seeking to get Ninja Warrior activities, if you like, recognised not just as a sport, but also as an Olympic sport.
Wow.
So that's sort of my hobby, if you like, or one of my hobbies. The cold therapy came into it really at the start of January, before COVID became a thing, should we say. So January 2020, New Year's resolution-ish. I had been seeing, and I'm sure this is something you'll hear a lot, I've been seeing lots about Wim Hof and who's this crazy guy and what's he on about. But I'd read enough from him and other people that potentially cold showering was good for helping with reducing cortisol levels and particularly stress levels. Yeah. I'd had my ADHD diagnosis. I was just starting a course of medication, which I'm still on, but I'd realized that one of the things I'd always struggled with was very high anxiety levels that I hadn't recognized. So I was looking for ways to manage the anxiety. I was looking for ways to try and help calm my head down. And I kind of thought, well, it doesn't hurt, I'll give it a go. Downloaded the free version of the app, and built up to taking cold showers. That was an interesting month, should we say, of trying and chickening out and trying and chickening out, and eventually kind of going, okay, well, at the end of a hot shower, I could stand a minute, 90 seconds of cold water, which then sort of took over to the point where, you know, you will have noticed in the video you saw of me, I now have a permanent cold shower, rain shower outside. That's where I shower. I kind of infrequently shower inside, but most of my showering is done outside. So, you know, my neighbours must think I'm a lunatic. I've got a shower curtain that tries to replicate itself looking like a fence, and I haven't looked back, really.
Wow. So there's quite a few things there that I just want to. So was it your adult diagnosis that sort of led you into trying out the cold and just trying something new?
Yes, so there's another element to it which came a bit later, but yes, it was. Because I was diagnosed in the December of 2019, so coming into 2020, because I have to take medication for ADHD, there's a period of, if you like, adjustment, to use an easy word. So you have to find out what your dose is, what works for your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
And the issue, I suppose, with that is, in that period, you're still not getting the full benefits of that medication. So ADHD is a condition that affects concentration, it affects decision-making ability, it makes you impulsive. And I have very severe ADHD, but what that also does is it creates, if you like, a hyper anxious state for a lot of people. So we live in a permanent state of high anxiety and alertness and stress. And I knew that I needed to do other things as well as exercise and getting, you know, daylight serotonin to try and manage that. And like I say, I'd seen some bits of Wim Hof probably on Instagram or Facebook at the time. I'd seen his backstory and the fact that obviously, you know, he came to it through massive trauma and used it to help that. And I just thought, it's an ADHD minor thing. I just thought, well, I've got a shower, I'll try, you know, I kind of like to experiment anyway. So I thought I'd give it a go. So that was the original reason I came to it. What followed on from that was, since, I don't know, the age of about 13, I've been aware of having something called Reynard Syndrome, which is essentially what people used to call thick blood disease. But what I now understand is actually a constriction of capillaries in the extremities of the body. And my concern, obviously, was for years, any change in temperature, so not just hot to cold, but cold to hot, indoors to outdoors, even picking up cutlery at certain times could trigger a Raynaud's reaction, which would mean all the blood would vanish from my extremities. It gets painful, and it's restricted me for years in some of the activities I'd like to do.
Yeah.
And I was worried about, hold on, is this the right thing to do? Getting into a cold shower, this is going to hurt. Yeah. So I started to do my own research into that. I found a study which I think came from around 1961 from the US Army, of infantrymen who all had Raynaud's, who basically couldn't go out on maneuvers. You know, they couldn't do parts of their job because it was so bad. And they undertook, or were, if you like, guinea pigs in a study to see if exposure to cold in a controlled way would have any effect on their Raynaud's. And I read the study, and the results were all positive. They did it was a 6-month program of gradual exposure to cold in a certain way, by the end of which the overarching sort of result was they still had Raynaud's, but their capillary flow had improved so much that they were still cold. They still felt, yes, my extremities are cold, but it wasn't painful. They could hold a rifle. They could go on a march. And that was a bit of a, okay, that's got to be worth a go. And within 6 weeks, if that, of taking regular cold showers, I was saying to people, I actually don't suffer with Raynaud's anymore.
Wow.
Cold, but I don't have Raynaud's. You know, it's not debilitating. That's probably been the biggest reason I've carried on, if I'm honest. The stress, anxiety management is there, but the Raynaud's thing, you know, I'm 48, so I've lived with Raynaud's for kind of the better part of 30 years.
Yeah.
It restricting what I could do, and it doesn't anymore, just by standing in a cold shower. I mean, come on, that's just astonishing to me.
Yeah. Well, for 48, you look amazing.
Oh, well, it's the drugs.
And you mentioned, well, first of all, do you still have that study that you could share? I'd love to post it in the bio.
Yeah, I'll try and find the original one. I was looking just a while ago. I'll try and find the right study because it was really detailed.
Yeah.
So if I can, I'll share it out to you. But it was, yeah. I'm sure it's like I say, it's 1960, 61. And interestingly, the way they did it was quite fascinating. So what the scientists for the US military did was essentially created watertight tanks with arm and leg holes. So the soldiers would sit immersed from neck down to torso or down to hip and armpit in gradually ever colder water, but their arms and their legs would stick out of these tanks. And they then had, if you like, thermal gloves, thermal boots on, so that their extremities were kept at essentially room temperature, but the rest of their body was decreased in temperature. And what they did over time was more of their body was brought into the water. And eventually they took off the gloves and the boots so that their whole body was in the water. And it was a case of how long did it take for them to adjust and then to be able to stay in the tank for X period of time. And then what did they, what did the soldiers then say they felt after immersion in water? And that was the bit that fascinated me. So I did actually at the start, having just remembered this, I invested in some USB heated gloves.
Yeah.
So I had some gloves that heated up to, I think they go to 23, 24 degrees. And my first couple of cold showers outside, because it was winter, I did wearing those gloves and sort of kayaking boots. Yeah. Just to see what it did. I probably did that once or twice and just went, you know what? It's a case of look, just get cold. And I also used the method that I got from the Wim Hof app of getting into the cold shower, which was actually to put my extremities under the water first. Yeah. So I'd start with my hands, get over that shock, then go sort of knee down to foot, get over that shock, and then I'd take the rest of my body in. And that's pretty much still how I do it now, if I'm honest. But yeah, you know, that was transformative for the US military. But what's amazed me is that it's not more commonly known. People still today knock back aspirin or half an aspirin or whatever it may be because they think that's the way to improve their quality of life with Raynaud's, or like me, they just go, oh, I've got Raynaud's, there's nothing I can do about it. There is, but it's so counterintuitive, right? When cold is your enemy and it restricts you, the last thing you would actually think of doing voluntarily is making yourself colder. But it's how quick it made a difference that blew my mind.
Yeah, my older brother actually has Raynaud's from a motorcycle injury he had, and he sort of damaged down his hand. And you can, when he goes into the water, and yesterday when we went for a cold swim, it came out. And so I mentioned to him about the Wim Hof shows that you like by putting your hand in a bowl with ice in, that you can focus using some breath work and directing the blood flow. And it's a process, and it's great that you're sharing that. You know, like you said, you stepped in for, you know, ADHD, trying to quiet the mind to sort of control the anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's turned out that all of a sudden it's helping with another sort of problem that you had, and it seems that that's now gone away. And you know, that's fantastic news.
But I will say this, right? So the start of this year, I was a bit lazy with the cold showering, and I kind of fell out of the habit for whatever reason. So I probably had a period of almost 2 months without taking a cold shower regularly. And the Raynaud's was back with full force. I mean, full, as bad as it had ever been. So it's not a cure that, you know, oh, I've cold showered, now my capillaries work. I now understand, you know, they're like rubber tubing, right? So the more you exercise the capillary, if you like, flexibility, I suppose, I'm sure, you know, any scientists out there will be screaming, that's not how it works. But in my mind, the more flexible the capillaries are because of exposure to cold, the more the blood flow improves. Therefore, the less I feel those symptoms. The minute I stop, everything shrinks back again, and the Raynaud's is as bad as ever. So, you know, it's one of those things you kind of go, well, I've stepped down the rabbit hole now, and I've got to carry on with this cold showering for the next 50 years or however long, because otherwise I'm going to have Raynaud's again. And frankly, I don't want that. But, you know, I think that's a small price to pay for being able to, you know, go out and do cold, you know, winter sports without paying, or, you know, whatever it may be. I'll take a cold shower then.
So, but if you take just the benefits alone for your health and longevity, you know, where you're saying the next 50 years, that's very possible with the science now that's coming out about cold therapy. But just, it's interesting when you said about like exercise, and it's exactly the same. You might be a weight trainer and you train to lift weights, and then you don't do anything for months. You're not going to get straight back in and pick up that big weight. So it is that exercise, it's that repetition, and you know, nothing lasts forever, and you've got to keep stepping in and doing it.
But to use your analogy of training, right? You know, so I'm a rock climber at heart. That's what I've always done, and I do sort of more body weight stuff because the ninja sports. But if I don't train for a number of months, you know, I know that, you know, at the moment I'm taped up on my wrist because I'm, you know, ADHD means I kind of, sometimes I forget myself. I hadn't climbed for a number of months, went climbing, got overexcited, tried a move that my brain said, oh, you can do this, but 3 months off said, no, you can't. And now I'm carrying a wrist injury, right? It's the same with cold showering. When I went back to it, sort of 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had to build up just like I did in the beginning again, 1 hand, 2 hands, 1 foot. I couldn't just jump straight back in, because for me, the risk of, you know, that like thermal shock was too great. So it was a bit frustrating to have to go backwards to go forwards, but it didn't take long, you know, and the brain's already used to it. But you know what? That's, like I say, small price to pay, really. I'm now used to it again. I'm comfortable with it again, and you know, you carry on.
Nice. What is it that you typically do in a week? And you said that you started it in the winter, and you've had a couple of summers in your cold therapy journey. What do you tend to do in a week? And do you have a preference, whether it's the summer or the winter? Is it the colder temperatures that you prefer, or do you like it sort of around that 15 degrees?
No, do you know what? I don't actually. I kind of, because I got into the habit of getting out very early morning, sort of 6:30 in the morning, regardless of the time of year, and just stepping in the shower. And sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's a minute, sometimes it's a bit longer. It's just as a, whoa, I'm awake. If it's cold and dark, if it's frozen, it's as exhilarating as if it's kind of coming into summer now and it's a bit brighter and a bit warmer. You know, notably, water can only really come out from the mains at the same temperature, right? It's always going to be around that 10 to 13 degrees temperature. So it's the outside temperature then that I use for added benefit. So very often what I would will do, and I still do, is I'll shower, I'll sort of towel dry off so I can just put something back on, on my legs, and then I'll either go out and I'll have a play on a slack line, or I've got a sort of inversion gravity boots, as they're known, so I can hang upside down from a pull-up bar and just get a stretch. Wow. But I do that when I'm still, if you like, damp, because I quite like the added cold of drying off in whatever the air temperature is. So I try to get as much benefit, if you like, from it as I can, because I'm aware that I'm doing it to be cold. I try not to rush to get warm again, unless, getting the kids ready for school or whatever. If I can allow myself time, I do. And I think it makes a difference. I really do. I think that makes a huge difference to, if you like, the pleasure I get from it is knowing I'm giving myself as maximum benefit. Yeah,
there is science to support natural recovery warming up versus obviously putting a towel around you or a jacket, and also that will help induce the brown fat even more in your metabolism. What is your? You said that you do your showers outside, which is amazing. So you get the benefits of being out in the nature as well. Do you do any open water swimming, or is it?
I was last year. Well, no. I'm hesitant to say open water and swimming. More open water, bobbing, submersing. Just being in. I'm not a great swimmer and never have been, but so yes, I was. I didn't really go to organized places. I just went to spots that I kind of went, yeah, that looks okay, that looks clean enough, it's quiet enough, and just kind of went in. And although it is very different, there's no doubt about that, I absolutely got as much benefit from going and having a bob around and a swim as I do from a shower.
What would you prefer?
Do you know what? I don't actually. I don't have a preference. I got to the point where being cold just felt good. It was calming. So, bless my wife indulges me quite a lot, right? We've been together, going up for 30 years, and she kind of went, okay, we've got a shower outside. Yeah, you would. And then last year, when I was still sort of entertaining more, I came home one day and she bought me a fairly large, but a kid's paddling pool. Because I'd been saying, I want one of these posh barrels and I want to submerge or whatever. We haven't got the space. All of a sudden, there's a paddling pool there, and she knew what was going to happen. There it was, filled up with cold water straight from the tap, and I was in it and loving it. And she kind of gets that it did me good. I'd go in there for 10 minutes, half an hour, come out, nice and calm and relaxed. So although it looks like I'm mad as a box of frogs, she gets the benefit, right? She, my kids get the benefit. But so no, I don't actually prefer one or the other, I don't think.
So you enjoy more the endorphin release of the cold and how it makes you feel, and how then obviously everybody else interacts with you sort of like throughout the day, because you're full of energy and you haven't got any mind fog. You're very clear, and you're ready to set off on your day. Do you remember your first experience, like
of showering?
Just your first cold therapy, when you decided that...
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, I know exactly how it. I was a chicken, So, it would have been just after New Year 2020. I downloaded the Wim Hof app. It only sounds daft. Download an app to know how to get in a shower. I mean, what? But I downloaded the app, and I was doing the sort of the very basic. Okay, have a warm shower and then 10 seconds cold, and that's what I did. And I remember when I flipped the shower onto cold, very, very gradually, I might add, I just kind of stood there thinking, what am I doing? This is not pleasant. This cannot be good for me. Why have I done this for 10 seconds? But when I turned the shower off, I got that endorphin release almost instantly and kind of went, oh, hold on a minute. Now this is different. This is good. Now, if I can find the video, I'll share it with you somewhere. Once, when would this have been? This maybe was the year after, but during COVID, there was a period in the winter where we had lots of snow. And I live a couple of minutes walk from a public golf course. So because it was shut permanently, I used to go out early morning, 5, 6 o'clock with my dog, go for a walk. And I don't know what possessed me. I have no idea, but there's a small, I call it a lake, my wife calls it a pond, whatever. It's a body of water. And because the course was closed and because I thought, I wonder, I just stripped off to my boxer shorts and jumped in, waded in. And I was so exhilarated by that experience. It was so different to the shower. There was something about it being misty and early morning and it was freezing. And there was I in this water going, wow. That I think was a big pivotal moment for me. I'd probably been showering for a couple of months, maybe by that point. But that was the moment where I went, this has made a difference. This is really psychologically having an impact on me. And again, that's one of those things where I went, okay, I have to keep doing this. I have to keep using cold because it works. You know?
Was that the point that you think that you conquered the fight or flight response, or when do you think that was where you started looking forward to it? Because that seems like a transformational moment.
In terms of showering, I guess that came when I knew I could just get in a shower and start it on cold.
Yeah.
Right. And have a shower just with cold water. That was the point where I kind of went, okay, I've got this now. You know, where I didn't have to build up to it. So from a showering point of view, that was good. That was me just going, right, you know, completed that, mate, kind of.
Yeah.
The transformation then from shower to cold water, so full immersion, that was a bit of a different one. And like I say, getting out there in that golf course in the middle of winter, that was the one where I went, I now look forward to this. I'm now enjoying this. You know, I actually want to find places where I can go and get some cold therapy and feel the benefits. And again, that for me was a big one. That was okay, ADHD, autism, and the anxiety that goes with it. There's a constant fight to control everything, every element of one's life. So that was useful for me because that was a big, I'm controlling this. I'm in control of the fight or flight and the everything, and I'm happy with that. So that was a huge moment. You know, that was a really big, okay, I've done that now. You know, and that hasn't really ever gone, even though I've had gaps in between. You know, I still enjoy it just as much as I did.
Nice. Monty, because you know, we're just coming out of this global pandemic, and the next pandemic is going to be a mental health one. And I'm interested for you to sort of explain sort of the mental activity, you know, more related to, we now know it's related to your ADHD, but that cause of anxiety and sort of what you noticed and what you learned by stepping into the cold, and how that helped sort of like quiet down the mind and that sort of process, just so that anybody that is suffering with stress, depression, or, you know, anxiety, how they might sort of understand, okay, and relate to something like that mental activity that you went, and how you sort of noticed it, sort of like how you controlled it and calmed it down and sort of moved beyond it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I suppose there's two elements to it. So I'm just going to move my chair because I'm about to fall off. There's two elements to it, really. I had to understand first that I'd lived with anxiety for basically my whole life. and I never thought I was somebody that had problems with anxiety or depression, or, you know, that just didn't enter into my world. Once that was obvious to me, once I understood that, I had to try to learn, well, how do I manage this without exacerbating the anxiety even more? And as much as I know exercise works for me, and I walk my dog, you know, every day, and I know that can be mindful for me. The way my brain, and I think lots of people with ADHD and autism combined tend to be, is you almost get used to something that works, and then it stops having the same sort of level of efficacy. So you might go, oh, I exercise every day, and then your brain goes, well, it's like a plateau now. Well, fine, but I'm now not getting exactly the same benefit or as much of a buzz. So now I need to find the next something and the next something. So for me, I think the difference with cold therapy is that it's never not a shock, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's never not a shock to the system when that first drop of cold water hits, or when you first put, you know, your first hand or foot into a body of water. It always does that kind of, oh, okay, that's woken me up. And it's that trigger, if you like, in your brain, that signal that almost puts you into a state of high alert to begin with, is the one that then lets you focus, right? So when that hits and it's cold, I always have the same kind of very quick thought process, which is, what am I doing? This is cold. And then I step in and I slow the breathing down and I enjoy it. And what it does is, because I'm focusing on, yes, I'm cold. Yes, this isn't natural. You know, I have to be in control of this. I cannot think about other things. I can't let what's coming next or what's gone before be in my brain, because I have to focus on, I'm controlling my breathing, and I'm going to wash my hair, or I'm going to do this, or whatever it may be. And that's a very different form of, if you like, mindfulness. So it's what I tend to call active mindfulness, or a form of active mindfulness, in the same way I use juggling as active mindfulness, or coordination things. It's this thing where if I have to concentrate on one thing because I'm doing it physically, I can't concentrate on everything else. Yeah. Right? I'm not skilled enough to do that. Now, maybe there will become a point where it's just natural for me, and it's not a shock anymore, but I haven't reached it yet. And we're 2 years into this now, and it's still not, you know, easy, should we say. So I think the difference with cold to anything else is it's just that element. It is never not going to be cold. So therefore it's never, I don't think it's ever going to be easy. So for that person with stress or anxiety, or somebody suffering with depression, most of the time what really they're searching for is control. You know, you feel out of control, whatever the circumstance that's created those issues is. What your brain is searching for is control. And cold therapy is a really, really easy way of just getting a little bit of control back over yourself. Yeah. Because we forget sometimes that we're not always in conscious control of what we do, or how we think, or how we act. We don't really pay attention all the time. You know, we do a lot on autopilot. You cannot, I don't think anyway, you cannot use cold therapy on autopilot. Because if you do, your breathing won't be right, or you'll make a mistake, or, you know, it just won't work. So because you have to be conscious, because you have to be present to do it, very quickly you realize, oh, I'm in control of this. I'm doing this actively. And actually, that's just a little bit of a mental win that your brain needs. That's all it is. It's a little win for you to, once you get out of that cold, to go, I did that. It was uncomfortable. It was unpleasant. It isn't natural, but I did it. And if I can be in control of that, maybe I can be in control of the rest of the day, you know, whatever it is to come. And it just helps build up layers of self-confidence or self-belief or sort of mental armor to say, okay, things might be tough, but if I can overcome this, if I use the same mindset, the same approach, maybe I can overcome other things as well. So I think that's what it is, and I think that's why it's so different.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I do think and you've mentioned it's the combination between cold and breath work is really important. It's really important to understand how big a part your breathing plays in the cold water therapy.
Yeah, but personally, I like yourself, that first sort of big diaphragmatic breath that you sort of get, and we never sort of tell anybody to put their head under the water until they are confident that what they are like with a cold exposure. But you know, I love stepping in and just, and you know, it's that switch that just happens. What I would say, I don't know if you've tried this, but setting an intention before you step into your cold showers. My personal background, how I got into cold therapy, was following a life-changing injury. I was on a ton of medication, opioids, sleeping tablets, and I was on them for over a decade. And the mental fog was dreadful. And all I was focused on at the time was getting healthy. You know, I could, my mobility was rubbish. I was just so lethargic. And I stepped in with one thing like yourself. You know, you stepped in with the idea of ADHD. I stepped in at the end of that first sort of those milestones, because you'll notice those changes as you go along your journey, is I ended up getting off all the medication. You know, over 12 years I was on opioids. Yeah. And I noticed one of the things on the CRYOSHOWER app, I built in a pain tracker.
I saw, yeah.
Because I, you know, with a back injury, and what that did for me is by highlighting what my pain was on a daily basis, whether it's chronic pain, acute pain, or you know, an sports injury. Yeah. It changed my mindset, because each time I was going in and then I was checking again afterwards. Yeah. So then my mindset switched to this thing of, oh, it's going to be cold, to all of a sudden it's like, I know this is making me healthy. I know that it's making me more alert, more active. Yes. And it's great to see sort of people's personal journeys and experiences, and how one is we perceive the cold in a different way, and also that mental sort of journey that goes on along the way, but really we all come out at the same place. It gets us where we need to be. And you mentioned that doctors or physicians might be turning around and saying, you know, that's not right, but at the end of the day, it's worked for you, and it's what you're experiencing inside, and it's, you know, nobody knows your body better than ourselves. And it's listening, and it's learning to listen to that intuitive instinct and that guide internally, and sort of going, actually, you know, I need to try this. And like you said, you stepped in and look what's happened. And from just our short conversation I don't see you looking back.
No. And I think the point I would sort of echo with you there is, when we talk to experts, doctors, GPs, whoever, who may not have the understanding, because why would they, of how cold works and what it can do, it tends to be, my experience is, their concern comes from, and it's right, if an untrained, unsupported person just walks into a body of cold water and dives in, The risk is they'll go into shock, everything will shut down, and if it's in an open water, they could drown. You know, if it's in a shower, it could trigger a stress response, be that a heart attack or whatever. And they're right. The education piece, and unfortunately it's happening through, you know, things like this and you know, everything else is, it's like every form of therapy or sort of help, supported, done properly with the right education, it's safe.
Yeah.
And when it's safe, you get the benefits. So that's the piece that's important, is saying to people, yeah, your brain tells you this is wrong, this is scary, don't do this. Fight or flight is a natural human response. But with support, you can overcome that, and then the benefits far outweigh the fight or flight, because you suddenly go, wow, hold on a minute, who knew that being cold could feel so good?
Yeah.
Who knew it could happen, you know?
Did you, just because we would always recommend, if anybody's got an underlying condition, is to seek medical advice. Did you seek any advice, or did you just really
My friend? Nope. I did my own research. I mean, I'm not unintelligent, you know, I did my own research. I looked into enough to kind of go, okay, what could happen? Now, interestingly, my reference point to start was a bad experience, right? So I did an obstacle course race, coming up for 10 years ago now, I think. And part of that was, you know, running around a forest, and then it was, oh, look, there's a big lake, probably 10 meter across. There's a lake. It was early April. Jump in the lake, swim across, get out the other side, right? And I remember to this day, because I didn't know any different, going like a bull in a china shop, right? And I'd been running and swinging on things, and my heart rate was up and my body temperature was up, and I was fully clothed, and I went boom, straight into the water, and instantly my body shut down. Instant. Wow. Complete panic, complete shock, can't breathe, muscles cramped, and there were safety kayaks on the lake, and there was a line of boys, and I was trying to get to this kayak and trying to get to the boys, and actually one of the guys in the kayaks just said, hold on to my boat and breathe, you know, and I'm trying to argue, whoa, panic, I can't breathe, I'm going to drown. And he just wouldn't move, and he kept one hand on mine until I just shut up, and until I started to breathe again, and my body got used to the cold. And as soon as he saw that I calmed down, he said, right, now all I want you to do is doggy paddle. If you want to do anything else, fine, but I just want you to doggy paddle. There's the other side. You'll be there in no time. You need to know that this is okay. I'm like, oh, dude, you could have just put me in a boat, right? And blow me down. I got to the other side and I got out, completed the rest of the thing, and thought that was the most heinous thing I've ever done in my life. But that stuck with me. Was the reason that was an issue is because I didn't have the knowledge that that was a stupid way to get into a body of cold water.
Yeah.
Right? No, I didn't understand that. Now I know different. I can get into cold water and I don't go into that shock. I could jump into cold water and I don't go into that shock. But before I've done that, I've checked my breathing, I've checked my heart rate. Now, that's the learn, right? That's the education. But I would agree with you, particularly if you're talking like you, decades of chronic pain or whatever it may be. Yeah, if someone's going to consider this because they've seen enough on social media to think maybe there's something to it, yeah, it's worth talking to your GP. Yeah, it's worth talking to a healthcare professional. Look, I'm thinking of doing this. The only thing might be that person might not have all the information. That person might not be able to give you the full picture. They'll give you a medical, if you like, opinion based on worst case scenario, body going into shock, etc. But they might not know more than that. So it's about information being freely available. Cases like yourself to say, you know, 10 years, 13 years of opioids, and now I'm off them. For people to go, okay, but done properly, this can work.
Yes.
Done as, if you like, an actual therapy, not a gimmick. And I think that's the danger, dare I say it, in the more things become popular, the more they become exposed in mainstream media. And, you know, I will reference certain TV programs that have just started without naming names, right? The more that happens, from my perspective, the more things can look gimmicky.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether there are positive outcomes from these things. In some ways, it just gets to feel a bit gimmicky, and the worry is that cheapens it, you know, or that makes people think, oh, well, this is just, you know, it's bandwagoning, or it's just for likes. It's not.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to get in a cold shower and post it on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah.
You have to get in a cold shower because you think this might benefit you and you want to change something. And if you do that with the right support, doesn't matter who knows or doesn't know, because if it helps you, that's what's important.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying is, you know, if someone's posting, I'm in a cold shower, and, you know, it's just a one cold shower versus somebody that steps in and, you know, they don't particularly have to have a reason, but if somebody steps into the cold, doesn't matter what it is,
yeah.
and is consistent with it,
yeah,
then that personal experience, that you will, at some point along that line, you will endure that personal experience, that transformation, and that personal experience is the real thing that's going to get more people stepping in. So if we're talking about the same program that's just started, is, you know, you might look at it and go, oh, this is a load of bull, or you might go, do you know what, I'm going to try that. I've got something, that person's a little bit like me, I've got something similar going on in my life, and it's that person that goes in and sticks with it, and until they beat that fight or flight response, because that's the thing, you've got to see it beyond that fight or flight response until you're comfortable with the cold, to really to be able to say, I've tried it, I've done it, it's for me, or it's not for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right, it's not going to be for everyone, right? I mean, my wife, for example, has terrible chronic arthritis in her back and in her hands and her fingers. Now, I've done enough research. I know enough to know that actually cold therapy can help with that, right? I get that. But she doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
That doesn't feature in her sphere of how I'm going to help my arthritis. I'm not going to force her. I'm not going to tie her to the shower, get in, it will make you feel better, because it never will. If she maybe comes to it one day on her own and recognizes a benefit, great. But you're right. It has to have your desire has to be genuine.
Definitely.
Right. It's not for fun, or, you know, I'll try it once, fine. Try anything. Well, you know, it's like there's a load of things on Instagram. I tried training like so and so for 7 days. So your results at 7 days are nothing, apart from a few thousand Instagram likes.
Yeah,
right? I trained like so and so for 12 months. Now we're talking a different experiment. Now we're talking longevity. Now you've got some information, right? And it's the same with this.
Yeah.
If you get to a point where it becomes regular and you see your own personal benefit and your own personal journey, and it transforms you in whatever way you want it to, that's a genuine benefit. If you do it once to say, oh, I did this, it isn't going to happen, is it?
No.
And I can give you a case in point. My sister lives in London. She's a lighting designer. She's a phenomenally talented young lady. COVID hit, and her career, she literally not long graduated from uni, and the career she wanted to get into was just shutting down wholesale. Boom, gone. Right now, in amongst having to find a job, in amongst going, what next, she took to going to Hampstead Ladies Lido with her flatmate and starting cold therapy and starting cold swimming. Right, and she did it to manage stress. She did it to give herself a focus, something that was completely unrelated to COVID. and she swims pretty much every day. She travels all over the country with theatre productions. She's forever seeking out cold water spots.
Right.
And she's stuck with it, right? And she's stuck with it because she's now seen the long-term benefit of it.
Yeah.
Now, that's the right kind of process. That's the right kind of journey. It might have been a bit of a fun or a, oh, should we do this at first? But now it's a, no, actually, I really enjoy this. I know the benefit for me. That's how it has to be for everyone.
Definitely. I just want to bring it back. When you talked about the sort of the first experience, your first sort of experience, the active stepping into the cold versus obviously when you were doing that assault course.
Yeah.
But what has changed from when you first started? We know obviously about the gloves. But what's changed from when you first started to sort of what you do now, if anything?
Yeah, so I now have a routine every time I shower, which, you know, sounds a daft thing to say, but I do. So originally when I was getting in, it was just overcoming it. It was just getting in, kind of going, it's cold, and I'm going to stay here for X amount of time, and then I'm going to get out again. Whereas now, I tend to, you know, I get in, I still go in sort of semi-gradually. I'll spend about 10 or 15 seconds with the water just because it's a rainfall shower. So it's literally that high above my head.
Yeah.
So it's straight onto my head. I have about 10 or 15 seconds with it just soaking me. And then, as daft as it sounds, my routine is just to grab the head and shoulders. I wash my hair, I wash my body. And I know that takes me about 60 seconds outside. And I do that so that I then have this knowledge that I'm going to be in here for at least a minute, right? Because that's how long this is going to take to do and to rinse off properly and everything else. I do that. There's my 60 seconds. Once all that sort of shampoo and soap has gone, I rinse for about another 30 seconds, turn the shower off, and just stay outside. Don't go for the towel. Don't do anything. Tend to do a little bit of sort of yoga stretching, a little bit of breathing, feel the cold on my skin, let the evaporation start. Sometimes I might do bits of exercises, but I'll stay outside for maybe another 30 seconds, maybe a minute. And then I head inside and a towel dry. And depending what the rest of the day looks like, you know, like I say, I might hang upside down for a couple of minutes just to stretch my spine, or I go in and I'm getting everyone else ready. But that actual core routine is 90 seconds to 2 minutes of, I do this for this long and this for this long, and then I get out, and that's enough. And I now know I don't need to be in there any longer. You know, as much as it might be nice, I don't need to be. My core routine is that if I'm doing it for another purpose, so if it's for kind of active recovery, like from a wrist injury after I've been training, or if I'm particularly stressed, yeah, then I might stay in there a bit longer, because what I'm actually waiting for is to know that there's nothing going on in here.
Yeah.
So I have to stay there long enough to go, okay, I'm not thinking anymore. Then I can get out because it's done that job. But yeah, my core sort of morning routine is exactly that. And you know what? It works.
There's do you ever listen to Andrew Huberman's podcast?
I've listened to a couple of episodes, but it's one that's on the list. I've got, you know, I keep seeing bits on YouTube.
He's just done a recent one, which was about cold therapy, and
right.
And it was about the latest research that's come out, and it was saying that for health and longevity, you only need to do 11 minutes a week.
Right.
That is whole body exposure, and obviously what that transcribes to in a shower will be slightly different. But it was 11 minutes whole body exposure, under sort of that 15 degrees C is sort of set in stone now. So that 59, 60 degrees Fahrenheit and below is that sort of marker. So that's sort of, I think that you're hitting that window perfectly, and it's good to hear that, you know, if you have an alternative use, whether it's for like recovery, like you said, or you haven't flipped the switch yet mentally, and you'll stay in. So there's a good thing. So do you use whole body exposure in the shower, as in making sure you get?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why, because it's outdoors, obviously, sometimes it's windy, sometimes it's not. I have it so close to my head so that even if there's a bit of wind now, I know that once I'm in, and my whole body gets wet. It's a fairly big rain shower head, so it kind of hits my shoulders as well as my head straight away, because I do want to be completely wet. That's the point of it. I do want it to be a head to toe experience. And I kind of, even though I don't think I need to, I do make sure I turn around a couple of times as well, just because in my head I'm going, right, I'm covered now. But yeah, to me, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. If that makes sense. There's no, I don't want to chicken out of it, I suppose. But yeah, that's why a rain shower, right? I've tried it with a normal sort of shower head, and I never quite feel it's as effective for me. But yeah, you're right, and it is cumulative. That, like Huberman says, that week-long exposure, it does. You do feel those benefits. And again, I'll go back to the Reynards. That week-long exposure is what keeps this at bay.
Yeah.
If I'm intermittent, this gets worse.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing that and going, right, I have to do this regularly.
So one of the things, so obviously with chronic pain that I was dealing with, that's why we built in that rotation to get the whole body exposure. But if you're just focused, your main area of focus should be under your arms, the lymphatic system, your groins, and as you said, your extremities, your hands and feet, as long as you're getting those. But I do like turning around and like down the back of my neck. And in my routine, I always induce under the head, and I always finish like on top of my head. I start just stepping in, and I always finish at that point, just for that last sort of like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember where I read the research about this as well, but that thing of the cold hitting the top of your head, there's a bit of almost like acupressure element to it. The skull's so sensitive anyway. That's the bit from a psychological perspective in terms of ADHD. If I'm doing it for my brain, it has to be here.
Yeah.
If I'm doing it for everything else, then it's the whole body. But when I hit my head and my face, that's the moment where I can focus on not focusing on anything else, if that makes sense.
Yeah. A sublime benefit for that is obviously because it's great for the skin and strengthens the hair.
Well, yeah, I've noticed this, although I'm going grayer the more I use it, but I think that's just age. But yeah, interestingly, the one thing I have also known, I don't carry a lot of body fat anyway, I'm kind of lucky with that, but I've noticed how much better it is in terms of the elasticity of my skin, but my skin is actually tighter, and I know my body fat percentage is easier to maintain when a cold shower. So I know there are more benefits than perhaps I'm considering with it, but yeah, I think it does a lot more than we give it credit for.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things, so your body fat, so as we get older, we don't produce as much brown fat, which burns the white fat. And for somebody that's super active like yourself, and obviously you're well into your physical exercise, well, anything, you're super active. But what that does is the cold therapy as we get older, so it helps us produce more brown fat. So like burning that, so that's a great thing. So you're supporting your metabolism, and that's just keeping yourself in physical peak shape that you're. Yeah,
absolutely. And that, from a pure vanity point of view, that was actually one of the reasons I started to think about it. Was there were two different people I knew independently, one of whom is like a elite level athlete, CrossFitter, fitness coach, he's just an amazing specimen of a guy, and another guy who's a professional photographer, a commercial photographer. The photographer had been suffering with really chronic back pain for a long time, you know, carrying lots of gear and and by his own admission wasn't in the greatest shape, carrying a bit of extra weight. And he started cold therapy at about the same time my other mate did, who was the athlete. And I noticed with both of them over the course of probably 6-9 months, they were like in the best shape I've ever seen them. You know what I mean? Relative to both of them. And I reached out separately to both of them going, yeah, all right, but what else are you doing? You know, particularly to the photographer, what's the routine? You can't just be sitting up. And he's a submersion, he's got like a water tank that he submerses in. He said, no, it's literally that, and my back pain has gone. Yeah. And I'm in better physical shape and I'm more alert. And he was probably the main trigger for me to go, really? Because that wasn't a celebrity telling me this. That wasn't an influencer, if you like. He's just a mate saying, no, really, this has worked. And he was probably the first moment where I went, I'm tempted. And then once I saw the other guy doing it, I was like, no, I'm really tempted. And I guess that's what helped me, you know, take the first step in. But just seeing all those extra benefits, it's like, wow, how is this actually possible?
So what is it that you love or enjoy most about cold therapy? And what is it that, I know obviously with your Reynards, but what is it else? What is it that keeps you going back in day after day?
So I think I've mentioned this before. The big part of it for me is it's a control mechanism.
Yeah.
If I do it, I'm in control at the start of my day. And that's very important for me to feel in control and to feel like I'm, you know, that sets an intention, if you like. If I can do that, I can probably get other stuff done. So that's probably the biggest benefit is that mental side. And then secondary to that is just all the other bits. Like I say, I know it's good for pain relief. I know that it's good for my circulation. And I like the fact that it's something that I've got ownership of. Nice. It's something that I do. It's for me. It makes me feel good. And I kind of figure, well, why would I not do that? You know, here's a bit of a curveball, right? You look at me and everyone does this. I'm such a ringer. Everyone goes, oh, you look like you must work out. Not as much as I should. I'm just very blessed with genetics, right? I am. But you're also looking at somebody because of ADHD who, you know, in my younger years, I drank way too much. I smoked heavily. I did all the things to extreme because of ADHD that was unmet. It's called self-medicating. Well, now I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do any of the bad stuff. I do exercise. I do these things. But it's kind of like extremes. I need to do things that are sensory. That's a part of my condition. I need sensory input and output. And cold therapy is a huge, huge sensory input and output as well. So it feeds a need that I have that really nothing else can meet. I don't think there's anything else that really meets it in the same way. And that's what keeps me going back to it. It's just the ultimate sensory hit, you know, because it does attack every sense in the body. Or, you know, I smell the chlorine in the water. I smell the fresh air. I can feel the cold on the skin. I can hear the water. It's just an astonishing thing. And it's very settling. So that's, I think, the biggest benefit to me that I hadn't even considered.
Awesome. I know what you mean. So that, especially the self-medicating part, you know, suffering with that sort of life-changing injury and the depression and the trauma that comes with it. You know, I lost my way with drugs and alcohol, and just because I didn't identify who I used to be, and it was that sort of, that's the thing that really knocked me, was that I just lost the sense of who I was, and those things happen. And I think listening to you, because I'm dyslexic,
right? Okay, yeah.
And so obviously we get very emotional. You know, we can go very deep within ourselves, and I've never really looked at it that way, cold therapy that way, because I've always been focused around, like, first was the back, the pain, the medication, then it was about mindset. But when just hearing you speak about it and then just going inside myself and thinking about it is, yeah, there is that. And maybe that's that extreme thing also. It's, you know, we've had so much that have gone on in our lives, and you start to get an understanding, and it's something always replaces something else.
Of course. Yeah.
I just find that really interesting. And thank you for sharing that insight.
Well, that's a big part of dyslexic thinking, because, you know, as it's referenced now, it's a big part of, you know, what's known as comorbidities in you know, neurodiversity world is this thing of, you know, like me, I knew I had ADHD. It was fairly obvious I was going to be autistic as well. I just never got there. Now I have. Same with dyslexia. The amount of people with dyslexia who are also either autistic or ADHD, or, you know, there's huge crossovers, whether they impact you or not.
Yeah.
The commonality between all of these things is we all tend to be very sensory seeking. We're very, very input driven to then be output driven, right? And like you've said, when you have a trigger that changes your mental state more than most, you know, what's referenced in terms of neurotypical people, we will sensory seek, and we will look for very often extreme replacements. I can't now exercise, therefore I'm going to drink.
Yeah.
I can't do this, therefore I'm going to take drugs, smoke, whatever it may be. When that then is taken away, we do go, but I need something. I have to have something.
Yeah.
Part of my, so, you know, I can't drink because of the medication I take for ADHD. It's just, I can't do it. But I love to drink. You know, I was a sommelier in my earlier life. I love wine. I know a lot about alcohol, and, you know, I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I enjoyed smoking. I know I didn't actually enjoy smoking. It was sensory. It was, you know, I needed to be doing something. But now I don't do both of those things. It is that, what do I replace that with that gives me the same input? And climbing has always been one for me, because, you know, again, very sensory activity, brain, body, the whole thing. Stepping in cold shower or cold water is unlike anything else, you know, and as much as it's not probably something that most kids would do, I would love to see a study for particularly kids with ADHD and kids with autism spectrum conditions, getting some cold water exposure, getting some, whether it's cold shower, just to see whether there's that benefit there, whether it does have that sensory hit for them as well, because I'd be amazed if it didn't.
Yeah.
But that then focuses you. Look at you. You've gone from chronic pain, taking lots of prescription medication, being depressed, being everything, to hosting a podcast, installing the virtues of something that has helped you, and continuing to do it yourself. That's like the ultimate display of the way your brain works versus anyone else's. And that, for me, you know, that's fantastic. It just proves a point. You know, you've got, it's got XYZ benefits without even realizing some of the others that are just happening in the background. That's wonderful.
It's opened my eyes, because also when you then explain it a bit further, and you said, you know, if it's either we're doing one thing, and if not, we do like drink or whatever, and it's like pressing the nuclear button.
Oh, yeah.
And so I fully know what you mean, because, you know, identifying those patterns and those triggers has been a long, like, uphill battle. Yeah. To get to this point. And yeah, it's not only that, it's all the programming that we've endured, you know, through school and everything like that, to that point where we get that clarity from that cold. And, you know, you start thinking about what's really important in my life. And, you know, stop thinking about how people will judge you or look at you, and the social media aspect and all this. And it's just like, do you know what? There's a lot more to life, and you start realizing that life's going on in here.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. And that's the important learn, isn't it? Again, I'll go back to that word for me. It's control.
Yeah.
And we think we know what being in control is. We think we know what that should look like because of what we're taught as kids and what we're shown in school, etc. But actually, it takes certain events for you to go, oh no, for me, being in control is this.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm going to maintain that, and this is how I'm going to keep achieving that. And that then opens up all sorts of possibilities, you know, and it's being aware enough to understand what does in control look like, and also what does out of control look like. And I know, you know, I go between the two still, you know, frequently, depending on what's going on, but at least I can see the difference. And my wife, you know, is honest enough to be able to say to me, hold on a minute, something's not right. What's changed? What's on your mind? You know, and then I can, if you like, I can reprogram myself or look at things. But that's the important thing. I look at you and I listen to you talk about this, and it, you know, whatever it's replaced is almost irrelevant. The fact is you've replaced X with this, and this is doing so much more for you, and by virtue of other people. You mentioned your brother yesterday on the swim,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And you know, he's interested. The fact that then you can have that, if you like, altruistic benefit as well. What a brilliant replacement.
Yeah. So just a quick backstory. I've just noticed I've kept you for so long, Monty, but so I actually had the idea for CRYOSHOWER while in the shower when the summer temperatures were kicking in and the water was getting warm, and I wasn't getting that thing that we sort of, that's the thing I love as well. And literally we've just been on this mission since 2019, and it was literally based on, this has changed my life so much, and people need to be able to know more about this, and they need to be able to access that temperature drop that's needed to activate that body response.
Yeah, I agree.
You've said so much, and you've given us so much value, but I was just wondering if you could sort of summarize just at the end of like what cold therapy has taught you on your journey. So it does not necessarily about what it's taught you regarding health, but has it taught you any personal lessons about yourself and you know, about your cold therapy journey, and like what has changed in your life, like personally, physically, and your health wise, we know, but you know, is that transcribed into your personal life?
I think, if I'm honest, not yet. I don't think I've got there, wherever there is, quite yet. I'm still, you know, relatively speaking, for me, early days. But what I've definitely got, again, it comes back to this thing, is I now know that I can regain control. Nice. And for me, that's huge. I know that I've got a very simple tool that helps me get back in control when I feel that I'm not. And I think that's probably the biggest benefit for me, because I can use that then to set a positive message for everything else I'm trying to achieve, whether it's in my business or, you know, in activities. So it's just awareness of how my brain works, awareness of how I can control it, and then I suppose the proxy benefits of how that affects everyone else around me. I know that when I'm in control, I'm a better person to be around, and I'm calmer, so I'm a better dad, and I'm a better husband and friend and whatever. So why would I not continue to do that?
Yeah, nice. What would you say? So what would you say to somebody that is either on the fence thinking about it, or that they've stepped in the first time, and we've spoke about this, and they need that word of encouragement to get back in? What would you say to somebody? about getting them into cold therapy?
I would say it's natural to be terrified. And if you weren't, you're not in the right place to try. So be scared, be nervous, that's okay. But know that you will overcome that. And once you do, you'll start to feel the benefits. And at that point, you'll wonder why you ever were worried. You just have to, and that timeline is going to be different for everyone, but you have to take the first step. You have to, and start with 5 seconds, start with 10 seconds. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, I think. So go slow, go short, be proud. I did 5 seconds of being cold. I put my hand in a bowl of cold water, whatever it may be. Allow yourself a bit of feeling good about it and keep doing it. And keep doing it regularly. Do it every day. Don't skip a day if you can help it. Don't, oh, I'm going to do this once a week. It won't work. Do it every day. Build it up. And you will never look back.
Wow. Monty, absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. I want to give you the last words. If there's anything that you want to say to anybody that's going to potentially be listening to this, also let people know what your social media handles are. We will also link those in the bio.
Yeah, sure.
But the last words, the closing comments are yours.
Go for it is the simple one. If you're thinking about it, do it. Once you've done it, keep doing it and don't look back. Because it's free, it's accessible, and it's probably going to change anyone's life in at least one way. So that's got to be worth a go. It's got to be worth an experiment. And from my point of view, it allows me to keep doing the things that I want to do at nearly 50 years old, that mean I don't get injured as frequently and I recover quicker. And, you know, I can go and muck around with Ninja Warrior friends who are far younger, far stronger and far fitter than me and sort of hold my own. So, yeah, just do it. Absolutely just do it. You know, I've spoke a lot about the brain. So if people want to know about the brain, they want to go for is Think Neurodiversity, either Instagram or websites. And if they want to know about the whole Ninja Warrior stuff, look at Ninja Sport UK, which is the governing body for ninja sport in this country. And then you can sort of find out all about that as a sport there. And you can find me under one of my Ninjester Monty, which is still my sort of Ninja Jester account that I use for putting sort of when I'm training and trying to publicize people to apply for the show. So Ninja Warrior season 6. If you like cold water, apply for the show because there's every chance someone's going to fall in anyway. So yeah, apply. If you fit strong and think you can give it a go, yeah, come find me on Ninja Warrior.
No, in fact, I have to tell you, my younger brother. So I've got 2 brothers that do CRYOSHOWER with me.
Right.
My older brother, ex-military, lost a leg,
Yeah.
and my younger brother is a Cirque du Soleil performer.
No way.
He did the Titan Games not last year, I think 2020.
What's his name?
Wayne Skivington.
Oh yeah, I watched it. I know. I love the Titan Games. An amazing series. Oh, that's so cool.
Maybe we have to try and get Wayne on to Ninja Warrior UK.
Now, is he back in the UK now?
But you'd have to juggle around his his performance work in Vegas. But
is he based in Vegas on the shows? Oh man.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. Well, films in July, but yeah, man, if you could get back, they might take him on American Ninja Warrior. But yeah, oh man, if he's been on Titan Games, that's like a shoe-in because that's a serious show.
Yeah.
Oh wow, very cool.
I just want to say thank you very much. It's awesome. Yeah, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, keep doing the good work.